This is Bill McMinn from Eagleville Bible Church, and this is the Way to Go podcast, where we talk about faith, family, and daily life, putting the Bible into practical, everyday terms. Welcome to the Way to Go podcast. I'm Bill McMinn, along with Bradley Brose, and we're talking about Psalm 101 because I think it's really challenging. And in the Psalm, he's talking about being blameless, and then I like it because then he lays out ways to be blameless. So he goes, I want to be blameless. I want to be blameless in my home, which I think is excellent. And then he'll get into what you say, who you hang out with, stuff like that. So I kind of want to go through some of that today. And he just starts out in verses 1 through 2. I will sing of your love and justice to you, Lord. I will sing praise. I will be careful to lead a blameless life. And I like that. I'll be careful to do it. Mm-hmm. Like I want to put thought into it. And sometimes we don't put thought into the way that we live. And I like him. He's putting thought into the way that he lives. When will you come to me? I will conduct the affairs of my house with a blameless heart. So when you think about blameless and being blameless, like what first comes to your mind? I'm going to be blameless.
Like I think of back in school age, like you can't blame me. Like I'm free. Like,
right.
So no one can pin anything onto you that you're did wrong or
right.
That's what I think of.
Yeah. You're not giving them any ammunition. That's for sure. You're
Yeah.
living a life that's in accordance with the laws of God. There's nothing missing. I mean, the word actually, where blameless comes from, is a word that means complete. It's whole. And for some reason, I thought to the story of when Ezra had to take all this gold and he's leaving the Persian Empire and he's traveling into Jerusalem and X number of talents of this, that, the other, and they're going there. They don't get robbed. There's no bandits. And when they measured at the other end, it was the same exact total as what they left with. Mm-hmm. So if I gave you $1 million, hey, I need you to give this $1 million to, let's say, Mark, for instance, who's producing the show, it would mean that when Mark counted it out, all $1 million were there. See, that's integrity, right? So I didn't take any of it. I didn't do anything I wasn't supposed to do. It's absolutely complete. So that would mean for me, there's really nothing missing in my walk with God, or there's nothing missing in what God expects of me. I'm truly trying to be blameless.
Yes. And just making sure that you're following God and what He knows what we need to be doing. That's why He gives you the 10 Commandments to show us ways to live and how we need to be.
Right. 100. Well, I think that's part of it right there. I think the 10 Commandments, and I think to a degree, not giving people handles. In other words, I don't need to be living in a way doing questionable things that lead people to have a lot of conversations about me that really don't need to be there. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? This kind of needless and pointless. I'd rather not do it, but I also understand that at the end of the day, I'm standing before God, not other people. Yes. So my main concern is with the laws of God. Then I want to walk in a way that's acceptable and right also in the eyes of the people around me.
Yes.
To a degree.
Yes.
Now, sometimes you'll get in trouble because you want to do the right thing. And because you're taking a righteous stand, that's what people are going to accuse you of. And that's okay. In 1 Peter 3:17, it's better if it's God's will to suffer for doing good than for doing evil. And sometimes people will cast aspersions on you because you hey, I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to party. I'm not going to go here and do this with you. In fact, in one of the verses in 1 Peter, it says they're surprised that you don't run right with them into dissipation. Like that's like shocking to them that you won't be the same wild person that they are, do the same wild things they're doing. That's like shocking to them, you know, that you're not running into debauchery. They don't even get it, but that's okay. You know, we can take that, but I don't want to do needless things. You know, I want to be as blameless as I can be.
Yeah. Yeah. And thinking about that, like you said, God's first. We need to honor Him, what His wants and needs are for us, and that's where we need to live that life. And then but we also have like government. A lot of people think that you have to obey every single law that the government, until it goes against what God has said, and that's when it's about what God says, not about what the government says.
That's interesting. I mean, there are laws about morality as far as stealing. You can't steal your neighbor's stuff. You can't kill your neighbor, things like that. When it comes to morality, there really aren't laws. Like in the old days, there probably were laws against adultery. All that stuff's off the books. What people do, obviously you can't rape somebody. Thank God, right? I mean, that's absolutely wrong. Molestation, abuse, that's all. Everyone in society, I think, for the most part, I would say 99.9 probably percent of their side would agree. Like those things are just wrong. But when it comes to being a moral person, waiting to marry, that kind of stuff, like there's no laws against that. So you got to look at the laws of God and follow that. But what he says is, don't look at vile things. I will not look with approval on anything that is vile. I hate what faithless people do. I will have no part in it. So I looked up the definition there, and the word means base. But then when you go to look up the definition of base, really, lamp base. Base is in chemistry, base is in, but it's always like the lowest, you know, a base, you know, we talk about putting in a base of stone. So obviously it's not that, but it's base as far as no morals, no honor. And then I looked up vile, and that means exceptionally bad. You know, I'm not going to look at things with no honor. I'm not going to look at things with no morals. I'm not going to look at things that are exceptionally bad. So what would you think that David would have in mind if he says, hey, don't look at vile stuff?
I mean, I'm just thinking of this really wacky thing that Courtney and we just saw, and I was just like appalled that this is even a thing. But it is where you have a husband and wife and another husband and wife. They live in the same house. Their kids all grow together. But this is the catch. They're swapping and like, what? That is just vile as vile can get right there.
Right.
Because, oh, well, this husband goes in this master suite with that wife. And it's just like, this is nonsense.
No, our society definitely needs to get back to morals. I saw one guy, and I like him. You know, I haven't seen him in a number of years, and he had some tattoo, and this is my favorite tattoo. And you look at it, the guy's doing, you know, I'm not saying in between a husband and wife it'd be perverse. It's not something I'd wear on my arm. Let's put it that way. All right. And I'm looking at it, and I'm amazed by it because I'm thinking, man, that's demented. Like that guy, you put a tattoo of that on your arm is absolutely demented. And here are women commenting, oh, that's great. That's awesome. That's, wow, how cool. And I'm thinking the women would be saying, you're disgusting. That's what I would expect them to say. You are absolutely disgusting for putting that on your body, wherever he had it on his body, that tattoo. But I don't want to look, I wouldn't want to have that where I'm looking at that kind of stuff. That's like looking at vile stuff. I would say pornography, even crass humor, all the dirty stuff that's out there. I don't think we just don't need to be looking at that.
Oh, yeah. No, you deal with that a lot with, as me coming out of the tree industry, there's a lot of coarse joking that goes on, and it's just like, it's not helping anybody, it's degrading, and it's just, we gotta stay away from that as much as we want to, just because it's funny and you just want to gather, and no, try to.
No, it was definitely funny. Like there was no doubt it was funny. I remember when I was on a work crew after college, before I went to seminary, I would just be sitting there with a newspaper over my face, just trying to ignore all of it because this went on, I think, about every day. There was somebody saying something crass, and I'm like, okay, I admit that was funny. You know what I'm saying? But it's still perverted. So I wouldn't engage in it. I wouldn't encourage it. I would just stay out of it. I just felt like as a Christian, this is no place for me to be involving myself or involved, because I'm a quick wit, you know, as in my own right. You know what I'm saying? So I always have some funny comeback, but on that stuff, I was like, no, thanks. I'm just, no, not me. I think even stuff you watch on TV, this is kind of straight talk stuff. So I'm looking at like different things on Netflix, and I see a description, and I'm looking at it because it says tawdry and tittillating. And so we looked it up. I'm like, well, what does that mean? Right. So I said, well, man, and then we looked it up, and it wasn't that bad. And then I looked, so I started to hit play, and then I see like strong, you know, graphic nudity, strong sexual content, and I turn it off immediately because I said, no, I'm not going to watch that. I actually turn on Jesus Revolution instead, because that's just a decision you have to make. It's like, if you see that coming up, like strong sexual content, graphic nudity, no, I don't. And I'm glad they put those warnings on there. I'm like, I don't need to see that. Yeah.
And it goes on Facebook too, and other social medias when you're scrolling, and whoa, what was that? You just got to keep scrolling. Don't, because if you even got a little glimpse of it, just keep going. Don't.
Oh, there's reels all day long, especially like on the reels and stuff that they put in front of you. TikTok was terrible. I haven't looked at TikTok in ages, but I mean, that was terrible. And you see it on certain sites. It's almost all they're promoting a sexuality. Almost 100%.
Yeah, and that's one thing that we have, that I have coming up on one of the video series that we're doing, is on women and just the external. It's more about the internal, that, and us men drive that that women want to do this and dress this way, and it's because of us men are putting that out there, and that's the desire. And no, we need to get back to the inner.
Well, I think that we don't have to pay attention to the way the world's going. How does God want us to go? And he even said, though, I hate what faithless people do, and I will have no part in it. And to be faithless there means to swerve off the path. And so he goes, I'm not even going to engage or go along with people who are getting off the path. I don't want anything to do with allowing evil to have a part of my life. And I think that's wise counsel right there. This is how I'm going to be blameless. He didn't say I'm going to hate faithless people. He said I'm going to hate what they do. And I'm going to have no part in it. And that's what you've got to look at. If you're joining with people, if you're putting your stamp of approval on what they're doing, that's what you shouldn't be. If you're sitting there applauding people getting drunk, well, you're kind of participating, being there with them. That's the kind of stuff I would be like, if that's the way you're going, if that's what you guys want to do, that's just not me. I'm not interested in that.
Yeah. And same with when you're out with friends and they want to go in somewhere, well, you got a choice.
Right.
That's inappropriate. You can either go along, like you said, giving that stamp of approval, or you can, I'm sorry, guys, I'm going to have to back out of this now.
No, I agree. Well, it's like the brother, I'm sure I told on another podcast too, my younger brother, them dragging him to strip clubs at lunch when he worked at work crew, and he wouldn't go in. He would just sit on the hood of his car. And to me, he was being a great witness. He couldn't help it that he was in the truck, whatever the work truck with those guys, but he would just sit on the hood. He wouldn't go in to participate in any way. And that's kind of going along with, I don't like what they do and I will have no part in it. So when it comes to popularity, acceptance, success, there are just certain things we don't want to do just to get ahead. So, I was invited to, participate in an event and I just saw what it was about. I'm like, no, absolutely not. Like my photos are not going there. I just can't, I'm just not doing it. You know what I'm saying? So you got to, again, what are you putting your stamp of approval on? David's saying, I'm not putting my stamp of approval on evil. And then he also talks about just the avoidance of things. And in verses 4-5, it says this, the perverse of heart shall be far from me. I will have nothing to do with what is evil. Whoever slanders their neighbor in secret, I will put to silence. And whoever has haughty eyes and a proud heart, I will not tolerate. And I read that verse and I think, good for you, David. You're setting a great example. You're putting a strong challenge for me, for all of us, right? I'm not going to have anything to do with the stuff where people are off in their heart. I'm not going to have anything to do with evil. And then whoever slanders their neighbor in secret. And what I thought about that, and I'm like, it's kind of like when you hear somebody talking about someone else, and what he's saying is, I'm going to silence that. Like you're not going to sit here and tell me a bunch of bad stories about someone else. Like I'm going to put it, no, we're not going to, that's not a conversation I'm going to partake in.
Yeah. Especially we got to, in the eyes of our children, like we got to make sure when someone comes around and with a pretty foul mouth, hey, can you knock it off?
Right.
And we need to do that to protect our children and things that they say. Like sometimes people don't realize that, hey, no, you can't be saying that around my family. Or, all right, we're going to leave. Or if they keep going, you might have to pull yourself and family out of that situation.
I thought too, there's the challenge of not gossiping yourself and then not participating in it, which I think in a world where people are such a big part of our lives, like I understand you do have to talk about people. And if you're working for your company, you've got to evaluate with your dad, perhaps a foreman, the performance of certain people. And people are coming in late all the time. You're going to probably complain about it. I wouldn't really call that slander per se. But I still think that we would need to think like, well, how many people are you going to say that to? Right? I mean, how many people, like you have certain people you're going to talk to that are part of your profession. But after that, you don't need to be telling everybody, right? Yeah. And plus when people, I think of even church setting, any setting, just all the negativity that's going on and all the nonsense of just, not
and just correcting when needs to be corrected. And we as Christians need to welcome correction.
Right.
And just like when God is pointing something out, he's not doing it because he wants to beat you down. He's pointing it out because he loves you. He doesn't want you doing whatever it is. If it's looking at porn and you feel conviction, God's pointing that out because he wants you out of that. He doesn't want you. And we have to have that same mentality of welcoming that correction from you telling me, hey, I see this. I mean, it's just like me let's say walking around with my zipper down. I appreciate you telling me that.
Right.
But
now that you mention it. No.
I mean, but these are things we have to welcome. Like, hey, you see something wrong with me? Hey, I want you to tell me. And we need that. That Proverbs 27:17 of iron sharpens iron. We need that.
And I think that comes from you accept it well too when it comes from people like you're walking life with anyway.
Yes.
I mean, you talk to them about all kinds of stuff, and then you can just go to them and say, hey, how do you think that came across? Like when we were talking about that topic, how was that? I just had the conversation with somebody. It's like, hey, are you okay with how we said that and whatnot? Because you don't mind, and you're not going to mind it if they say, no, I thought we could have done better. Like you're going to understand that's going to make me better, right? But he says that I will not, whoever has haughty eyes and a proud heart, I will not tolerate it. I love that because it kind of gives us as Christians permission to say, I don't need to be around or put up with the people who are the look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me. I'm not going to tolerate that. And I think that sometimes we do support that. We support it on Instagram when people are just constantly having to look at me, look at me, look at me, and we're sitting there liking it. I don't think it's healthy. I really don't. I think people who are obsessed with themselves are going to find that's never enough. It's not really going to ever satisfy them. So it's an empty hole, actually. Yes. And you're just trying to keep, I want people looking at me, noticing me, appreciating me. It doesn't end. Like it just like, if that's what you really want and you're not thinking about, no, I'm here to help these people. I'm not here for what I get out of it. I'm here for what I put into it, right? And you'll get plenty of satisfaction just from helping people. But the prideful, I don't want it.
And it's in today's world, we're digging even deeper holes because we have people using filters all the time to amp their own image up. And talking to somebody, they saw somebody that they know in public, they look nothing like they do on Facebook. And it's like, what are you doing? You're putting
That's kind of funny. My buddy and I we have an Instagram friend, and he ran into the person one day, and he said that same thing. He said, they don't look anything
takes
like
off all the acne, slims them down a little bit. I mean, just the whole nine
where
yards.
are these filters? Where are these? Like, I don't even know what they are. I hear people talking about like these filters you put through pictures. I don't know if it's an app or what. I'm like, I have no idea what that is. Like, You're just
using the filter with the dog ears and the tongue hanging out.
Yeah, that's what I do. I do the Snapchat, obviously. I like to be a bunny. That's my favorite one. With the little whiskers and stuff. No, I'm just kidding. I was never into that. I never could get adults doing, not to put you down, because that's not what this show's about. I really don't care if you use those filters. But no, you make a good point. You know, it can be prideful. And I think with signs of pride, you're bragging, you're praising yourself, you don't listen, you blame others, you take no responsibility for your own actions and behaviors. I think those are signs of I'm prideful. And he's saying here, I don't have to tolerate it. And I just feel it came out, Charles Spurgeon, and there's a book behind you called Lectures to My Students, and he would have a preaching school, and he was like one of the best preachers around. If somebody came in and said, I'm the best, I'm great, he sent them packing. It was, you're too good for the school. You know, going, he wouldn't tolerate it because he knew that wasn't going anywhere good. He wanted humble people. He wanted people who kind of felt like they don't belong there, that God's really going to use. Because if you're so full of yourself, how are you going to be full of the Spirit? You know what I'm saying? Because you're so full of you're not even paying attention to it anymore. So I like that. He's not going to at all tolerate it. And it gives me permission to say, and I don't have to welcome that in the ministry. I don't have to welcome you and allow you space to fill if I see that. Right?
Yeah.
Not going to tolerate it.
Yep.
Right. And who our friends are. My eyes will be on the faithful in the land, that they may dwell with me. The one whose walk is blameless will minister to me. Who does he want to hang around with?
His good friends.
Right.
But
good friends, not meaning close friends, meaning actually moral friends, right?
Yes. And this is where, like I went through a real spell of just praying and just fervently seeking God to, Lord, give me a friend that I can just walk, like I talked with about the iron sharpens iron, and that we need that really close person. And we could say our spouse is our close person, but sometimes when you're having an issue with your spouse, sometimes you need to get a outside perspective, and they might slap you around and say, no, she's right, straighten up, get back in there.
Right.
And And that's what we need.
Right.
And you want that friend. You need that friend.
Well, we need people to tell us the truth, but I think we need people who are a good example. Like, who are the people that are going in the direction that we should be going? If you see someone who's going in a wrong direction, don't make excuses for it and think, well, but they're so much fun. Yeah, well, it's going to be fun for a while, but it's not going to be fun when the results and the payday comes in for all this nonsense, because it is leading you in a painful direction. Always. Sin is not your friend. It does nothing good. It gives you nothing. It only takes. And that's what you got to realize about it. Yeah, there's pleasure in sin. There's pleasure in immorality. There's probably pleasure in getting drunk. There's probably pleasure in getting high. There's pleasure in all of it. No one ever said there wasn't. But the problem is, it's the bitter aftertaste of all of it.
Yes.
It's the pain that comes because of the consequences of those things, why you shouldn't be doing it.
Yep.
Right. Exactly. So hang around with good people. That's one of the great things to say. So Psalm 101, I think it's a great challenging psalm. I'd encourage you to read over it, ponder it, pray about it. And you all have an awesome and a blessed week.